Yeah, that witch is becoming a real problem. This time, you've been sent into ancient Greece, specifically the classical era. A time of great war and conflict, but also a remarkable leap forward in human civilization. So, can you survive one of humanity's greatest expansions? Or will ancient Greece thermop the floor with you? Let's find out. Greece's classical period began in 510 BC when Athens fell and broke its Hippias, and ended in 323 BC when Alexander was no longer great. As an act of kindness, you've been sent to the funny year. But there's nothing funny about needing to survive. The first thing you need to do is dust yourself off and get your bearings. Maybe a sign or something will help. Well, that's no use. You quickly recall your vast knowledge acquired from countless hours on GeoGuessr and look around for some notable landmarks. After all, some of these buildings still exist in the modern day. Well, there's a familiar sight right over there on the horizon. The Acropolis of Athens. That's in Athens. I must be in Athens. Well, now you know where you are, which means you can start figuring out your next steps for survival. Oops. But first, you need someone to talk to because you're gonna need help. There's never any shame in asking for help. That guy over there seems friendly enough. Although shorter, the dude is absolutely ripped from his labor-intensive chores and looks like he could kill you in one punch, but you approach him anyway. Told you. Now let's assume he's a bit more approachable this time. You begin to ask him a question, but like a monolingual American, you always forget that there are other languages out there besides the freedom one. But you try your best. Here goes. Hey man, can you help me out here? The man turns his chiseled jaw your way and begins to speak, quickly bombarding you with a bunch of indiscernible mouth sounds that completely fry your brain. But luckily, the words have been displayed in a big old bubble next to his head. Look at all them silly letters. Wait a minute, you say, scratching your chin. I've seen these letters before. Just then, you get a flashback to your college girlfriend's sorority dorm where you found the Euclidean letters, just as you were finding Herclidean. Don't kid yourself. You were doing math homework, you goober. Unfortunately, you come to the realization that knowing just a few letters doesn't mean jack shit in terms of understanding a whole language. Now, some of you modern Greeks out there might lift your hairy arms and say, "Ha, I can speak Greek, I'd survive." Well, you're wrong. Ancient Greek is completely different from modern Greek with completely different tones, vocal inflections, and pronunciations across several regional dialects. Ancient Greeks wouldn't understand a word of modern Greek, so you'd have no real advantage. Needless to say, you're not going to be communicating anytime soon, at least not orally. You begin attempting some charades as a way to express your needs. Too bad all of your wacky waving is perceived as a threat. Man, that's twice. Since you just insulted a random citizen and are an obvious outsider, you're arrested and sold into slavery. Looks like you've been slammed to the bottom of the societal barrel. But what did you expect? Speaking of society, like any society in history, ancient Greece operated under a hierarchy. Since you just got dunked into classical Athens, let's focus on that. Here, there were four main groups. The upper class were the elite, the cream of the crop, and we all know that the cream rises to the top. To be a part of the upper class was a birthright. You must have been born in Athens to a moderately or highly wealthy family and be well educated. And a guy. The members of this class were the only ones that held any political power and the only ones classified as citizens. That being the case, the upper class controlled all social and economic policies as well as law. As a democracy, 500 citizens were chosen at random each year to run the government, given complete control over the proposal of new policies and laws. Kind of like an oligarchy. These policies were either accepted or rejected by popular vote. Next was the middle class, usually referred to as the medics. They were all the dudes who weren't born in Athens but still lived there. Foreign skilled laborers such as craftsmen, merchants, and artists. These guys built ships, constructed buildings, and kept the city maintained. Sure, they didn't have a lot of rights like the ability to own land or vote in governmental affairs, but they were the core of the Greek economy. You know, a thing that barely exists today. Oh yeah, women were also part of the middle class. Not many rights outside of being in charge of the house and raising the kids. Ancient Greek society wasn't too fair to women. The lower class, or the freedmen, were exactly who you think they were. Come on, it's right there in the name. They were freed men, former slaves who bought their own freedom through intensive labor and saving. They pulled themselves up by their sandal straps and worked hard their whole life, only to have little to no rights or place in society. But hey, at least they aren't smelly slaves anymore. Slaves were lower than dirt in the societal hierarchy and weren't even considered a class. They were usually captured prisoners of war or purchased from former traders. Slaves were either owned by families as house servants or by the government outright for general labor, which came in all kinds of flavors: farmers, bankers, soldiers, employed friends with benefits, police, all kinds of stuff. Imagine being arrested by a slave. "Sir, you have the right to remain silent." Huh, well, at least I have rights. Slaves made up about a third of the population and were an absolute goldmine for their owners. Profit margins are pretty healthy when you don't have to pay them much, or at all. Speaking of gold mines, that's where you're headed. Time to get branded and get a move on. You're swiftly carted off to join a group of miners so large it would cause a YouTube elite to start sweating. Oh man, looks like all the cool slaves have been sent to the surface mine to get gold and silver, but since your mining level sucks, you get to go underground for some cuprum. That's copper. Working in a mine was brutal. Slaves were subjected to intense labor all day, working in poorly ventilated and swelteringly hot cave systems hundreds of feet deep in the earth, illuminated only by dim oil lamps. You can't see shit, which means your fellow slaves can't see jack shit, so watch out for rogue pickaxes. You toil away day in and day out for a while now, but notice that, like the rock around you, you're getting chiseled. The combination of your new Mediterranean diet and constant physical exertion is starting to pay off. You're able to mine more efficiently, and you're outperforming your coworkers. Thanks to all of your hard work and dedication, the local mine supervisor rewards you with more backbreaking work. Looks like you gotta add your pride to the list of things getting crushed around these parts. You're working hard and gaining some gains, but you need to start finding a way out of here soon. You see, the life expectancy for miners is only a few years. With hazards like coal dust, lead exposure, and cave-ins, it was a quick way to have your lifespan get completely rocked. Ah, jeez. Looks like Atticus is showing signs of a fever. And Pucus over there? He's earning his namesake. You ask your buddy Atlas what the heck's going on, to which he responds, "Looks like they all caught some sort of..." No matter where you throw a dart on the board of history, diseases were always in the spotlight. Perhaps the most common in classical Greek times were smallpox, influenza, and measles. Luckily for you, your parents love you and got you vaccinated when you were just a wee babby, right? Of course, otherwise you'd look like this. But ancient Greeks weren't so lucky. It was pretty common for outbreaks to be spontaneous and run rampant, killing off people by the thousands. And what kind of disease discussion would it be without the mention of the plague? Yeah, the plague showed up in ancient Athens right around 430 BC, 10 years before you arrived. During that time, it eradicated between 75 to 100,000 people, or about a quarter of the city's population. The plague comes in 3 flavors: bubonic, pneumonic, and septicemic, and strawberry. They're all basically the same thing, but affect you in different ways. Bubonic was the most common, as it's kind of stage 1 of the plague. Usually transferred from a flea giving you a little nibble, the plague is a bacterial infection that just penetrates your cells and fills them with toxins, killing them. This will also cause you to have a fever, the chills, and make you generally feel like shit. Your body will also start getting polluted with bumpy boils. If left untreated, the infection can spread to your blood, where it upgrades to septicemic plague. This is when parts of your body get the rot and start to turn black, causing severe pain as well as more frequent, unprovoked traffic stops. If the infection gets into your lungs, that's when it's classified as pneumonic plague. You begin coughing like crazy, and your respiratory system starts to fail. And that's no good. Luckily, doctors at the time relied less on the big guys in the sky for help and decided to take matters into their own hands, establishing and developing the concept of medical treatment. It was widely believed that the key to a healthy life was to consume healthy foods like fruits, veggies, nuts, meats, and dairy, not to mention plenty of exercise. Crazy thought, right? But if you did get the ick, there were a few solutions. The most common was bloodletting. Look, you're just a big walking blood sac. And since you're sick, that means you've got time to get rid of that. Thanks, Doc. I feel so... Other treatments were often natural remedies like herbs, soups, teas, and honey to heal your little stummy. But anyway, you're safe cause you're vaccinated, which means that you're the sole survivor of a recent outbreak and you really like trains. Guess you're a free man now. Being very free and very man means that you now have access to education. Sorry ladies, you're gonna have to wait a while before you learn good. Time to hit the books. Now that your yearning for the minds is now a yearning for learning, it's time to trade your physical gains for mental ones. Ancient Greece had a wealth of educational resources including public and private schools, personal tutors, intellectual lectures, and a recent invention: books. Books started showing up around the 5th century. It was a great way to record down your stories and lectures without having to memorize them. But some pretentious Greek geeks like the famed philosopher Socrates believed that books would be the downfall of society, as people would just write things down rather than commit knowledge to memory. But imagine this: if you wanted to learn a story or a bit of information, you had to catch Rheticus on a Tuesday afternoon next to a fountain in the park, but you showed up a little bit late and missed half the story. Yeah, can you rewind like 10 minutes, please? Found a really good Euro spot. You want some? Nah, more for me. You attend several lectures and slowly learn to read and write the local dialect, Attic Greek. Not to be confused with Basement Greek. Although they were rare, you managed to find a small public library to see if there's anything interesting, when something catches your eye. Oh, no way. What the fuck? Like I said, I'd survive.